right, we are live here in the Pace Studio with Wild Cub. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having me.
Look nice and cozy. Can you tell us a little bit about this first song you're going to play for us?
Well, this is one of the first things we put together for the new record, pretty much. And I don't know. I feel like we gravitated to it really quickly because it felt like something different, which is good. You know, it's like when you're sitting down to start over and do this stuff again, especially for us because we had been touring for 2 years nonstop on the last record. This one just felt like a nice thing where you were instantly out of your comfort zone and dealing with things where you're like, well, I don't know what I think about this, much less what other people would think about it. So I think that was what drew us to this one.
Cool. Well, whenever you're ready.
This is called Somewhere.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, you mentioned the new record, and it's out in September. Can you tell us a little bit about the recording process? I know you recorded in a house, is that right?
Yeah, well, we kind of did the thing after we had gotten off tour where we, I think we had a certain amount of pressure to, on this record, both from ourselves and from everybody, just, to follow up what we had done. So we did the thing where we went in with the big fancy producer in a really nice studio, and we were there for about 2 days before we kind of looked around and were like, I don't know what we're doing here really. And so we kind of went back and stripped it back and did it exactly how we did it before. I feel like, I don't know, when I was in high school, one of my teachers said something that I try and constantly remind myself of doing stuff artistically, which is usually the stuff that's unique about you is the stuff that you're not that proud of, or, you know, that you think that you should be hiding from people. And I think as we were doing the first record, we kind of felt like we had this like self-produced record and maybe it sounded like crap, and who knows, you know, it's like we had all these doubts because we had done it in our studio, and it was a big moment for us. I remember us packing up our gear in the big studio, being like, sort of all kind of being like, we're doing this, and then walking outside and like the door shutting, and that was a big sort of test of faith moment. And it seemed like the best thing that we could do was just figure out the most authentic way to make a record. And we're like, well, this is the thing that seems like it could be a weakness for us, but maybe it's something that we'd rather we'd rather die on the sort of kind of doing it how we do it in our own unique way, rather than doing something that we didn't feel like we had a connection to. So we went back and kind of did it the exact same way, which is nice. I feel like there's something really important, especially with how weird the music business is now. It's really nice to be able to make sure that when you're creating a record, you're doing it in a way where, you know, when we did the first record, we were just turned our house into a studio and literally had no idea if anyone would ever hear the record ever. So we felt like it was cool to sort of recreate that with all this pressure on ourselves of what will this next record be. Be like, well, what if we just make it like this may never be released ever. We'll just make a record that we're really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the next song you're gonna play for us?
Yeah, this is the song's called Speak, and I think for me it was me kind of like challenging myself to, so much of the first record is sort of fragmented lyrics, you know, like this idea of these little sparks in the darkness, and then cumulatively they make a narrative. And this was the first time where I was kind of saying, well, what if I try to do the opposite of that and really weave a thread from the beginning to the end? And it sort of started with like a couple vague memories from different moments in my life that I then like kind of let take their own path once you start writing them, you know. It's nice. I like to be able to start writing and then let the process of writing fill in the rest of the narrative. So I had these couple formative memories of different things in my past that I then like let turn into this thing. So this is definitely one of our more like lyric heavy songs.
A lot.
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
How in another life we
Well, you mentioned, you've said in the past that this record, there's sort of a through line with the idea of connection and finding sort of common experiences and ground with people. Or can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I don't know. It's like I was watching some interview with Richard Ashcroft where they were talking about this idea of like the pram in the hallway, and the idea that like as you get older you have less and less interesting things to write about. And for me, you know, the song that we're about to play, Clatter, you know, it was a song that I wrote like in the moments that I met my wife, and then over the 2 years or 2+ years that we took it and all around the world, it was like I was like getting married and then having our first child. And so it was a really big question. It was like not only was I facing a little bit of writer's block, a lot of pressure, but also this question of like, okay, well, what do I write about? I mean, for me, when I was writing the first record, there was like this giant thing there in the distance where it was like, how am I going to reach this thing? And when you've arrived at that, it's like you don't want to just suddenly start being like writing songs about mowing your lawn or something. So for me, I wanted to find a way to like kind of go back and mine these memories that I had, and not just memories. It wasn't like a nostalgic like, oh, let me go back and reminisce through these things, but just find moments in my life where now, especially in retrospect, I'm like, wow, I was especially vulnerable or adrift or lost in that moment, you know. And I was excited by the idea of making a record that felt really big and really loud and emotional, but in an emotional way that wasn't like top 40 music of like, let's go out and party, it's Friday night, or even bigger stuff like, you know, we're gonna live forever, but instead this kind of thing of like, you know, with some of the stuff from Speak being an example of that. So I was trying to kind of tap into those things and like start with a memory or start, you know, and also remembering how like as you go through life you have just these different interesting seasons where like people drift into your world, and for a year or a summer or even 5 days they're like this massive piece of your life, and then before you know it they've drifted away, and you don't really even know that they're drifting away when they are until they're gone and they're in the rear view of your life, you know. And so it was just interesting to sort of immerse myself into that world and be like, okay, what are these things and how can I shape them into something else, you know, because I felt like in terms of writing this longing love song or writing about this the great thing in the distance, I felt like I'd kind of done that and been able to share that, and really that was a rich experience. So it's like, well, what's the next thing going to be?
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect segue into the next song.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
I see you hidden in the night, I found you. I see you separate from the others. Bed crooked in the light around you, bathing in the sight of the others. I couldn't say what I was thinking, my heart shrinking to sad spots blinking in the sun. Wait 1 minute, I had to listen for it. It was hidden in the fall, hidden in the fall, waiting on love to call, hidden in the fall. I met you in the dead of winter. I stood stranded in the water, dug deeper than a crooked splinter. I turned away from all the others. I couldn't say what I was thinking, my heart shrinking to sad sparks blinking in the sun. Wait 1 minute, I had to listen for it. It was hidden in the fall, hidden in the fall, waiting on love to call, hidden
Awesome. Well, before we let you go, we want to let people who are tuned in know where they can connect to you live. You're playing here in town on Monday, is that right?
Yeah, Mercury Lounge on Monday, but that's sold out. I think we will be back in the fall. We haven't announced it yet, but we will be back. And then we play in LA on the 31st at Resident. And then we do have a full US tour in the fall as well. Those tickets are
And
up.
dates up on your site and
Yeah.
stuff? Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here today, guys. We
course.
really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
us. Thank